I've got the top 10 fantasy basketball drop candidates coming up next on Beat the Odds. Don't go anywhere. Hello, sports fans, and welcome back to another episode of Beat the Odds. I'm going to count down the top 10 must drops in fantasy basketball. If you enjoy this content, I encourage you to like this video and help the channel grow by joining the 10% of people who are subscribed to this channel. Now, to qualify for this list, all players must be owned in at least 60% of leagues. This episode is brought to you by Thrive Fantasy Sports. Use the promo code BEATTHEODDS to double your first deposit up to $250. And first-time users get a free square. Like yesterday, if you bet on Luka Doncic scoring 1 point in his matchup against the Utah Jazz, then you win. All right, let's dive right into number 10. We have Keegan Murray, 77% owned. 32 minutes per game this season, 12.9 points, 5.9 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 2.1 threes, 1.2 steals, 0.5 blocks, 1.2 turnovers on 39% shooting from the field and 85% from the line. Murray's in a great position to improve on his numbers from last season, but he has yet to take advantage of this so far this year. He is getting almost 2.5 more minutes so far this season and has seen a modest increase in his rebounding and assists, but his scoring has remained stagnant thanks to a sub 40% field goal percentage. I think he has some better shooting nights ahead, but I wouldn't argue against getting someone like Brandon Miller, who's 56% owned, over Keegan for the time being. To number 9 we go. We have Malcolm Brogdon, 81% owned, 28 minutes per game this season, 17 points, 4 rebounds, 6.1 assists, 2 threes, 0.9 steals, 0.2 blocks, 1.8 turnovers, on 41% shooting from the field and 80% from the line. Brogdon has benefited from a rash of injuries to Portland guards to start the year, but now that Anthony Simons is back and Scoot is gunning for a starting spot, I feel like the best days for Brogdon are likely behind him. I try to sell high on him over dropping him outright unless there happens to be a feature guard, possibly even Scoot, who's available in 48% of leagues that you can pick up. Let's go to number 8. We have Bobby Portis, 68% owned. 24 minutes per game this season, 11 points, 6.5 rebounds, 1.2 assists, 0.7 threes, 0.8 steals, 0.6 blocks, 0.9 turnovers on 48% shooting from the field and 77% from the line. Now, I don't really have an issue with Portis. He is one of the best bench bigs that you'll find in the league. The reason he makes this list is that it looks like he won't be counted on for scoring as much this year, likely due to the arrival of Damian Lillard. He's getting 2 minutes per game less than he was last season, and he's no longer a nightly double-double threat, only achieving that feat twice so far this year. I'd swap him for Derek Lively II, who's owned in 58% of leagues if he's available on your waiver wire. To number 7 we go. We have RJ Barrett, 78% owned, 29 minutes per game this season, 19.1 points, 3.9 rebounds, 2.6 assists, 1.9 threes, 0.5 steals, 0.2 blocks, 1.9 turnovers on 43% shooting from the field and 85% from the line. Now, what do we do with RJ? He's the only 20-point scorer that many managers in 12-team leagues struggle to pull the trigger on draft day. This season, he's a plus from the line, which I don't really see lasting as his career percentage from the line is 71%. Nevertheless, his inability to grab defensive stats and rebounds, both at or near career lows, make him a difficult person to trust, especially in category leagues. If you don't need the scoring, you might be better served with a Malik Beasley, who's owned in 54% of leagues. He's going to give you more threes and better field goal percentage. Let's go to number 6. We have PJ Washington Jr. owned in 67% of leagues, 31 minutes per game this season, 13.9 points, 5.2 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 2 threes, 0.7 steals, 0.9 blocks, 1.5 turnovers on 43% shooting from the field and 71% from the line. PJ's move to the bench has solidified my reasoning to place him on my drop list. He managed 7 shots and only 1 rebound in 25 minutes in a close game against Toronto. I expect his secondary categories to dip further while his percentages may possibly go up. With the rise of Brandon Miller and the return of Miles Bridges, I think it's safe to rule out PJ as a useful fantasy player this year. In my opinion, DeAndre Hunter, who's owned in 55% of leagues, is a far more appealing player to own. To number 5 we go. We have Asar Thompson, 75% owned, 27 minutes per game this season, 10.1 points, 8.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 0.3 threes, 1 steal, 1.3 blocks, 1.2 turnovers, on 44% shooting from the field and 69% from the line. Now, why are the Pistons limiting Asar's role? Maybe it's the poor shooting. Maybe it's because they've lost 18 straight games. Either way, it's frustrating to own a player that clearly deserves more than the 17 minutes per game he's been receiving over the last 5 games. If you own him and decide to ride it out, I wouldn't blame you. He's a tantalizing athletic rookie. But unless you're in a roto league where you can stash him on your bench, you may be better off with someone like Sadiq Bey, who's owned in 55% of leagues. Let's move to number 4. We have Andrew Wiggins, 67% owned, 28 minutes per game over the course of the season, 12.6 points, 4.4 rebounds, 1.2 assists, 0.9 threes, 0.3 steals, 0.4 blocks, 2 turnovers, 42% shooting from the field, and 63% from the line. Now, Wiggins is clearly not the player that we saw prior to his departure from the league for personal reasons last year. He's down almost 5 minutes per game from last season, and he's in danger of losing more minutes to Moses Moody if he can't turn his season around. For the first time since his sophomore season, he has accumulated more turnovers and assists, and he's averaging a career lows in points and in stocks. We may have to move on and consider Denny Avdia, who's owned in 64% of leagues, as a capable replacement. Let's go to number 3. We have Wendell Carter Jr., 68% owned, 29 minutes per game this season, 9.4 points, 8.6 rebounds, 1.6 assists, 0.6 steals, 0.4 blocks, 1.6 turnovers per game, on 38% shooting from the field and 57% from the line. Now, Wendell Carter Jr. has been a fringe player to own given his lack of defensive stats, but his start to the season, his current hand injury, and the fact that the Magic have gone 12-5 since he has gone down makes me think that he may not return to the team with the same responsibilities as he had when he left. He is nearing a return, so we'll see how it all plays out soon enough, but I feel like Santi Aldama, who's owned in 46% of leagues, has a good shot of outplaying Wendell Carter Jr. for the rest of the year. To number 2 we go. We have Ben Simmons, 74% owned, played 32 minutes per game this season, 6.5 points, 10.8 rebounds, 6.7 assists, no threes, 0.5 steals, 0.8 blocks, 2.5 turnovers per game, on 53% shooting from the field and 25% from the line. Simmons was showing a resurgence in his brief time for Brooklyn this season, but in true fashion, we continue to fall for the what-ifs and are forced to accept the reality that has been Simmons for the last 3 years. Some will continue to have faith that he'll be worth that roster spot, but I really don't count myself among that list. I consider a player like Emmanuel Quickley, who's owned in 58% of leagues, to roster over Simmons. And last but not least, at number 1, we have Markelle Fultz, owned in 61% of leagues, 29 minutes per game, 11.4 points, 3.4 rebounds, 4 assists, no threes, 1.2 steals, 0.4 blocks, 1.2 turnovers, on 48% shooting from the field and 75% from the line. Now, he's only managed to play 5 games this season for the suddenly playoff contending Magic, and like Wendell Carter Jr., it seems like the team has figured out how to compete without them. He's going to be competing with Andrew Black, Jalen Suggs, and Cole Anthony for minutes when all are healthy, and my fear is that the knee that he's struggling with is the same knee that he tore an ACL in 2021. It's risky to hold the roster spot for him, and I'd rather give that spot to Jalen Suggs, to be honest, who's owned in 56% of leagues. And that does it here for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please smash that like button if you did, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. I'm going to sign off for now, but I'm going to catch you guys on the next episode.